Welcome to all. My name is Howard Kraft. I have been a part of the Leadership Forum for over 20 years, and I am honored to be the chair of the board, as well as the chair of this year's Leading to Repair Summit. And, you know, when we and the planning team put together all the elements of the Leading to Repair Summit, we wanted people to know things. We wanted people to feel things and do things as part of the ongoing leadership journey. We really wanted to increase the consciousness about the impact of the past 18 months have been on all of us as individuals and as leaders, and put it in context and hopefully get us to become more aware of how we as leaders can influence repair and influence transformation that comes out of what we all have faced. And each of us has faced it in different ways because of our own context, because of our own geography and a number of other factors, but it's really important to think about that. We also wanted people to feel, as I know I have in the past 20 years of being involved with the Leadership Forum, a sense of support. One of the great attributes of this community is the broad network and the increasingly diverse network we have across the globe. So supportive environment is important. And last but not least, we want people to do something. We want people to, as leaders, hopefully be better leaders, take action on this, whether it's in your own lives personally, or it's in your communities, or in your not-for-profits that you work with, or your organizations in which you support. We have developed the agenda for the overall summit, Leading to Repair, with 4 ILCs. There are incubating leadership conversations. This is number 2, and we're delighted to have Joshua here today to do that. We have this one and 2 others, and then we have a 2-day summit on July 14th and 15th, and we hope that everyone can attend all of that. But again, I am just delighted to welcome you all. I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Bittner, a longtime Leadership Forum participant and friend. Kathy, take it away.
Kathy, you're on mute.
Okay. Hi, everyone. You'd think after, days and days on Zoom, you would know if you were on mute or not, but I actually had my screen minimized so I could look at other things about Josh to introduce you. So I'm actually on the board also of Leadership Forum Community, and I'm happy to welcome all of you here. You're in for a real treat today. I have met Josh and we've been a part of the same sort of psychology circles, if you will. We're both psychologists, and we met at Metro, which is a regional group in New York City. And Josh is the chairman of the Global Leadership Council, is his own consulting firm. He's a senior advisor and a coach, and he inspires innovation and change. Also, he's very passionate about leveraging clients' strengths and accelerating their learning and unleashing their potential. And he's a leading authority, by the way, on succeeding in demanding environments, and an expert in mindful leadership. And so mindfulness, as he's going to go over with us, but it's really the discipline of being focused and being present and being, inspired and inspiring in an era of rapid change and information overload. I would say that we could all attest that we've all been through that in the last almost 18 months here. He's also an author of a book called Mind Shifting: Focus for Performance. And I think just as important as that is a relationship that he and I have forged, along with Josh is friends and colleagues with lots of people around the world, and he's just a great person as well, and a great human being. And I went to one of his seminars on mindfulness, and I thought it was amazing, and I said, we need to get him for the Leadership Forum community. So here he is, and take it away, Josh.
you so much, Kathy. Thank you so much, Kathy and Howard, and for the invitation. It's great to be with you all and seeing where everybody's from. It's amazing from around the world. This is an incredible audience and group. And Howard mentioned community. You know, we're going to talk about the emotional trauma we've all been through. And the healing is a community thing, right? So we've all been experienced a community trauma, and we can heal as a community. So we'll talk more about how we can do that. A lot of when I'm teaching is about performance. And one of the key modules is the emotional piece. So we'll talk about, this is mindfulness for performance, but also mindfulness for repair and emotional resilience. Little context first on me. I live in Bar Harbor, Maine. This is my family. See their artwork, my kids' artwork behind me. My wife rescues feral cats, so we have a couple dozen in the house right now. And if you want to adopt a cat, we've got lots of kittens right now. So as we get going, I'd like to invite you into a safe space. I experienced this session you had last week was amazing in that vein. Set some boundaries for yourself. We'll talk about mindfulness, but it's so hard when you're staring at the screen and your computer, which we used to use to transact. And now what I'd like you to do is use it to connect and be present. So put away your email, put your phone on airplane mode, close the door if you've got one and you're lucky to be at home with a door. Bring up the chat for this conversation. Otherwise, let's just have one conversation. And rather than breakouts, what I'm going to ask you to do is to co-pilot with me. So first mindfulness intervention is just to check your dials and gauges. Don't be a tourist. Don't be a passenger. It's very easy to kind of go into, infotainment mode, right? No, think about your mood, your attitude right now, and decide how you want to engage with me. And I'll invite you to use the chat a lot, but also come off mute and ask questions as we go. You don't have to call this mindfulness. I have a CEO that I've worked with for years, and he starts every executive team meeting with a minute of silence. Doesn't call it mindfulness, doesn't do breathing or any of that stuff, but he knows that that meeting is more effective because people get clear on their agenda and their intention before they engage. So just type into chat one quick reaction to this. If you're having a thought as you do your own internal pre-flight checklist, what comes up for you, and make that decision how you engage. Just take 15 seconds to do that. So I have lost, interesting, I've lost my access to the chat window. So I'm going to have to bring that back. Hang on a sec. Huh. All right. All right. I'm going to take the slides down now. Okay, now the chat's coming back up. Great. So I'm going to put them back up. And hopefully, yes, chat stays up. Awesome. Okay. So quick agenda. Talk about overload, why it's hard to be present. We'll talk about what mindfulness is. And usually I'm teaching, what I'll teach you is the introduction and the emotion module. Usually this is part of a 6 to 8 week series. The old model, right, was put people in a room, in a classroom for a day and hope that they change, and that's go crazy in hindsight. Through COVID, I've learned that this actually works better virtually. We can teach people a little bit at a time. And so I'll give you an introduction and dive into the emotion piece today. I want you to build an action plan so when life and email, et cetera, hits you in the face in an hour, you have some way to stay present and focused. A little context. About 2/3 of these names are my clients. And these companies are into mindfulness in a huge way. You know, SAP has trained thousands of people in mindfulness. IBM has pods all over the world where employees are leading their own mindfulness groups. Millennium, big hedge fund, BlackRock, the biggest asset manager in the world, they're not into this for the wellness component. Let me tell you, that's nice that it makes people feel good. But you know what? Really? They want performance. So that's what mindfulness gives. It helps us be more effective and perform. So that's kind of the organizational context here. You all don't need that sell, but most of our clients do. They don't want to just be happier. They want to get things done. So let's start with the challenge. Type into chat, what makes you busy? What makes it hard to be mindful as you go through your day and your week? Work, thank you, Callan. Life, yes. Other things. Type into chat, one thing that makes it hard. Emails, kids, family, priorities, yes. Overcommitment, we all just take on so much, and then those things compete with each other. Exactly. Back to back. And we'll talk about the dangers of back to back. Cell phones, all sorts of technology, right? There's tons coming at us. So it's not enough, though, unfortunately, that we have all this coming at us. We interrupt ourselves constantly to check social media, to look on Facebook, and, hey, YouTube, it's a client of mine, great stuff, but they call it the attention economy for a reason. They're making money from your eyeballs, okay? It's as addictive and more addictive in some studies than crack. Stimulates the same brain pathways as chemical addiction. So quick thought experiment. Think about this. I'm going to put you in a room for 15 minutes. Could you sit there and do nothing? Just type in the chat, yes, if you think you could sit there and do nothing, or no, you'd be like out of your mind. Oh, I got a lot of pretty good balance here. Great. I'm going to up the ante now. You're going to sit there, and researchers really did this. I'm going to give you a button. And if you press that button, you'll deliver a painful electric shock to yourself. Who here thinks he could sit there quietly, type yes, and not push the button, or no, you'd be tempted to push it? Type in your answers in the chat. Let's see what people say. Could you sit there quietly and not push the button? Tempted, a few. Okay, yes. Guess what the researchers have found consistently? 2/3 of men will sit there and repeatedly push the button, right? It's not enough that we have to be stimulated all day. It's so hard to be just quiet and still. Only 1/4 of women will push the button. Right? What does that say? So some significant difference there. So think about it before you interrupt yourself and push the button, so to speak. Do you need to distract yourself more? Because with all this coming at us, we multitask, right? It's so tempting to multitask. It's so delicious. It's so fun. We can get more than one thing done at the same time. And this little tyke can play a video game and eat his breakfast and use the potty all at the same time, right? Is it so delightful? Except there's a little bit of a problem. He grows up to be this big tyke, and it's taking him 40% longer to do any one task. Worse, he's making twice as many errors. So what's the cost of an error in your business? I'm not saying never multitask. You're going to be on those conference calls where you need half your brain, right? But think about the cost in terms of errors, in terms of actual efficiency, and even worse, in terms of your brain. So the frontal lobes, what you need to focus here and not there, right? What we call the executive functions, not just because executives need them, our CPU, that gets thinner with chronic multitasking. It's neurotoxic. Right? That area of our brain is also vulnerable to overload. We're constantly overloading it. And when my wife says, hey, honey, can I give you some feedback? Whoa, it's also vulnerable to the amygdala hijack, right? So when we get hyper aroused, that shuts down. So be careful and so supportive of your frontal lobes. Take good care of your frontal lobes is my message. So instead of doing all this, we can have this alternative. We can be mindful. So I would invite you, we're going to do 3 minutes of mindful breathing. If anybody doesn't want to do that, anybody want to be the control group? The control group is going to check your email for 3 minutes and tell us what that experience was like. Does anybody want to volunteer? Type in the chat if you want to be the control group. Otherwise, we can all just stay together and take a breath. No volunteers yet? Okay. So get comfortable, right? Please be comfortable. Put your feet solidly on the floor. You could lie down for this if you want, but I suggest an upright, dignified posture is best. I will close my eyes, but mindfulness does not mean turning inward, and you don't have to close your eyes. If you're sensitive, you can turn off your cameras. And yeah, put yourselves on mute just for now so we get less background noise. Thank you. Just start to pay attention to the movement of your breath. In and out. And you can use those words as anchors for your mind and your attention. Just say in as you breathe in, and out as you breathe out. Deep, slow. You're not trying to breathe deeper or slower, simply using those words as anchors for your attention and seeing what happens. Notice your breath, particularly at your belly. You can put your hands on your belly or in your lap. And just Follow the breath all the way in and all the way out. Deep, slow. Calming, easing. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I feel easeful. If you find thoughts juggling around your head, just notice them and come back to your belly and the feeling of your breath moving in and out. Smiling, releasing. Put a soft smile on your lips and see if you can smile to yourself inside, almost from inner ear to inner ear. So turn on warmth and kindness towards whatever you're experiencing right now. Just welcome it. Instead of our reflexive, which is to fix or change, see if you can open yourself to whatever's going on inside. If you're uncomfortable, you can move. It's not about being frozen or static, but see if you can treat your experience with warmth and gentleness. So mindfulness isn't just being focused and present, it's with an attitude of openness and kindness towards our experience. Wonderful. So when you're ready, slowly float your eyes half open. Let the screen and the community come to your attention again. And now, staying with your body and your breath, see if you can share with everyone through the chat what this is like for you. Just type in 1 or 2 words. What is this like for you to be mindful of your breath and to be able to communicate at the same time? See if you can do that. Wonderful. Yeah, so you're defining mindfulness, right? As Harris says, focused, learning, opening, enjoying. Wonderful. Anybody struggle with it? Anybody find their mind racing? Because it can be loud in our heads when we kind of quiet the noise. I see Kathy nodding. Yeah. So it's taken me many, many years, 20 more, 30 years, and my mud is gradually settling and I'm getting some clarity on top. But at first it can be a lot of swirling. This is just one of many ways to practice mindfulness and to try to be present. Whoops, that's interesting. I wonder why my screen did that. Interesting. Come on. Huh. All right, I'm going to stop share and come back to reshare. Seems like it's hanging up a little bit. All right, so it is bouncing all over the place. Come on. All right, let's go backwards. Backwards. All right, here we go. So definitions. Mindfulness is present, open, and engaged attention. The opposite is mindlessness, right? It's automatic habits, distracted. And we need habits, right? We learn to speak, to walk, and we don't want to have to think about that again every time we want to do it. But when we get into mindless habits, it's kind of like we're all trained into this consensus trance. We stop really being open and getting all of the information we need to make good decisions. So think about what makes you mindful, what makes you more mindless. And there's wonderful ways to come back to yourself and recenter in the middle of the day. It doesn't have to be mindful breathing. Type into chat one way that you do that now. How do you ratchet down? How do you recenter in the middle of the day? What do you use if it's not mindful breathing? What do you do? Music, great, Charlie. Yes. Walking, awesome. Yes, and that's on my top 10. I'll show you my top 100 and my top 10 list. Go outside, Sue. Absolutely. Yes, Susan and Sue, wonderful. And Greg, yes, if you're outside, it brings you back to your senses, right? We evolved in natural settings, and yet we live in little boxes. So there's so much research we were talking about before we started the call about what happens when you're in natural settings. It resensitizes, brings us back to our senses. Awesome. So it sounds like you all know that already. Make sure you're doing it as a regular thing. Okay, so here's the model I've developed. And this is an empirical model based on a lot of research. I'll share with you a little bit of the research, but basically this is a model of leadership, an authentic model of leadership, right? So it's first about showing up with your body, with your mind, with your emotions. We'll dive into that module today. And with your spirit. When I say spirit, be careful. I'm not talking about spirituality here. I'm talking about meaning, values, and purpose, okay? Once you've shown up, then you can connect, and then you can take someone else on a journey and inspire them, right? So my personal passion is to create mindful leaders, mindful teams, and mindful organizations. Even though the world is moving the opposite direction, I can't do that if I don't first show up and connect with you. Only then can I potentially inspire you. So here's the research, a little bit of it. We'll start at the bottom. First, John Kabat-Zinn, Ellen Langer, people like that, showing us that when we're mindful, and we pay attention to our bodies this way, we live longer, right? Our immune response is better. Our telomeres stay longer for a longer time. Amazing. We don't know all of the psychoneuroimmunology that makes that happen. Then who wants 10 IQ points, free IQ points? I don't know why his hand isn't raised. Okay, thank you, Kathy. Stop multitasking. 10 IQ points. You could be that much smarter. You want another 10? Practice mindfulness. Emotional stability, right? What we've all been through this year is an uncertainty, chronic uncertainty, and that makes us crazy, right? We love predictability. The anxiety of that is very wearing and traumatic. Mindfulness gives us the ability to sit and stay with what we're feeling and not react to it. Use the information. And then there's the spirit piece, right? When we're engaged with why we lead and why we do this work, then everybody around us feels more empowered, more satisfied, and in what they call in the retail industry, shrinkage. There's less product that goes out the door. Better relationships when we listen empathically. We'll get into mindful listening in a minute. And ultimately, we can inspire others more effectively when we show up in this way. We have more gravitas and presence, right? Again, Ellen Langer's research, amazing. So let's get into the emotion module. Let's talk about how we can apply this to emotion. We'll talk about emotional intelligence, we'll talk about empathy, and we'll talk about positivity. But first, what is emotions? This is building on Lisa Feldman Barrett's work. First, an emotion is three things at least. It's a physical experience. It's a bodily felt experience. It's a story. It's not one thing. It's how we decide we want to label our experience. And then we know how other people feel, often from their behavior. So it's three different components, all shifting and moving like the weather. We have a saying in Maine where I live, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. It's the same with emotions. You don't like what you're feeling? If you really sit with it, it will pass through like the weather. All your emotions want to do is get your attention and give you information. Once you've got that information, they will shift and move. We get stuck when we don't listen. So just notice those three levels that you can listen to: the physical experience, the story, which is really choiceful. You can decide what you're experiencing. It's not like anger is one sort of monolithic thing. You decide, oh, I'm angry now. And that changes everything, the story. So let's talk about emotional intelligence first. First, what is it? You all study this, you all do this, right? But let's bring it back to the foundation, right? Peter Salovey's initial definition. It's knowing what I'm feeling, having a guess about what you're feeling, and using that information to make decisions and reach goals, right? It's not a synonym for interpersonal skills, right? Oh yeah, that person has good EI, good EQ. No, it's what am I feeling? What are you feeling? And can I use that information? And the basics, I get so many clients, right? Most of what I do is coaching, one-on-one coaching, when I'm not teaching this mindful leadership stuff. So many of my clients come in with an emotional intelligence problem. And the first thing I've got to do is deal with stress, because stress drops EI like a rock, right? If I'm irritable, if I'm drained, I come home, I'm home already, right? I'm irritable with my wife. I'm not my best self with my kids. So the first thing I have to do is take care of myself. That's the foundation. And then naturally, my emotional intelligence, my ability to tune in goes up. So first, step one, take care of yourself, manage your stress, and then you can start to do more interesting things like paying attention, okay? When we pay attention mindfully to specific cues inside myself and around me, then I can build empathy from the inside out. All right, so let's look more about this. How do we build emotional intelligence? How do we get this radar? This is building on Andrew Chatte's work. We can start to label our feelings. And labeling gives us power. Remember, emotions are a physical experience. It's a label, it's a story, and it's a behavior. So we can decide what we want to feel. So as you go through the week, think about this one potential action. And I hope you're building your action plan as we go. You know, the pre-flight checklist, the idea of labeling, anything that appeals to you, write it down. Start building your action plan right now. This is a really fun exercise. I know there's a lot more feelings than this list of 5, but if you boil your palette down to just these 5, it makes life simpler and makes this exercise easier. So the exercise is just as you go through the week, noticing, when are you scared? When are you glad? When are you sad? And one that's most ignored is shame. There's so much of behavior that's driven by our own failure to meet our own standards and our desire to cover it up. Drives so much behavior. So just notice and label it. You could journal this or just notice it in your head. It's hard if you don't have a system to make this systematic. But there's something wrong with this list you'll probably recognize. It's pretty negatively biased, right? So the joy part, the gladness part gets short shrift here. So just in the way of not getting too sucked into the negative, type in a chat right now your favorite positive emotion. What's your favorite positive emotion? Joy gets, oh, well, joy is immediately the winner. And laughing, thank you, Michael, for some variation. Pride is a nice one, although dangerous, I might say, David. Peace, awesome. Accomplishment, yeah, when you make somebody's day, so feeling of giving, right? Delight, awesome. Nobody's said, thank you, Greg. Awe, yes, awe is one of my favorites. And some amazing research on the power of awe, connectedness with, yeah, awesome, right? So there's so many wonderful positive emotions. So don't let me delude you with this list that it's all negativity. But negative ones, so-called negative, are the ones that are harder for us. So the labeling exercise is most useful with those. So give them some attention and notice if they shift very quickly just by paying attention and labeling them. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about what we experienced the last year and a half. It was the classic change curve, right? This is death and dying. We all went through a trauma, not just losing 500,000 people, right? But we lost a sense of normalcy. We lost the ability to go to baseball games and barbecues and all sorts of social things. We lost connectivity. So we're all dealing with grief. It's not abstract anymore. And so the first step is to notice where you are yourself. The basic mindfulness approach to emotion is to be accepting and listening to it. So first notice and accept where you are on this curve. And then we can give other people empathy. That's what's needed here. That's the healing, is when we can be with somebody else in their feeling, not over-involved, right? Not sympathy, but hey, Howard, Kathy, Carol, whoever, this is what I hear you feeling. That validation, that being with somebody is incredibly healing. So we're all talking about repair now. Empathy is one of the best tools. But don't jump into that. Don't be a caregiver. First, care for yourself. Know where you are, and then you can help. So let's talk about how do you build positivity. And actually, this is interesting. So, all right, all of this is so interesting. My slides, the order has been like totally messed up by something. There's gremlins in the computer. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so we'll go with what it is. Let's talk about positivity for a minute. We'll come back to empathy later. Because those negative emotions are so difficult for us, we have such a negative bias. This is building on Richard Boyatzis' work. We need to juice up the positive side. All right, so I'm glad there was such a great list when I asked you what the positive emotions were. We need to build up that side because the parasympathetic nervous system, it's a sleeper, people. It's so slow acting, right? It takes a long time for that system to deactivate. However, like I said, my wife says, can I give you some feedback? Or your boss says that, or my client says, hey, I got some negative feedback. Whoa, right? We're so easily jacked up by our sympathetic nervous system. Hey, it helped us survive, right? It helped us not be somebody else's food. But right now it prevents us from opportunity. It prevents us from getting food. So just be aware, any negativity around you and inside you really makes it very stressful. And what gets the most high productive environments is positivity and 5 times more positive experiences than negative. So high performing teams have 5 times more positive experiences than negative. Anybody here in a committed relationship want to stay in that relationship? 20 to 1, right? Think about that. This is amazing. How could you get to 20 to 1? You got to really look for things that are nice to say about your spouse, or significant other, or friend, or teammates. Successful, effective managers get 5 times more positive feedback than negative because of this same problem, right? Our negative bias is so heavily, the news feeds on this, you know about this, right? Negative news gets lots of play because it gets eyeballs, again, the attention economy. So be aware of how you create your environment to juice up the positive side. All right, I flashed this up, unfortunately, so it's a little less of a good quiz, but what do you think the relationship is between stress and performance? Any guesses? This is the oldest research in psychology, goes back to 1898, the Yerkes-Dodson law. What happens as stress goes up? What happens to performance? All right, Lyndon, you're too smart for this. Right, so stress kills productivity. So yes, but to Howard and Lyndon's point, we actually do need some stress. There's used stress, there's good stress, right? And so how do you do this? Well, you challenge yourself. You don't just, right on the left side here, this is you're lazy, you're kind of bored. Over here, you're burning out, right? Most of us, let's be honest, most of us are over here, we're burning out. We're pushing the envelope. And everybody wants to be in this middle zone, right? That sweet spot, but it's really hard to stay. This is a slippery slope. We need to balance rest and recovery periods on the left side with challenge experiences on the right. So what's the optimal balance? What do you think? Type into chat. What's the optimal balance between rest and recovery on the left and challenge on the right? What do you think? Any guesses? Type into chat. What do you think is the optimal ratio between rest and recovery and challenge? 70-30, 3 to 1. 70-30, I'm getting a couple of times. Great. 50-50, interesting. That's, yeah, so it's the old number I just showed you, 5 to 1 again. And it's 5 times more rest and recovery to challenge. Anybody getting that? Anybody getting 5 to 1? These are old-fashioned words, right? This is vacations, weekends, evenings. Anybody remember those words? We need that desperately. And so we do need that positive stress too, but we need so much more time to recover. So challenge yourself and bring an attitude of challenge, right? Go after challenge and don't just think it was, oh my God, the light. If you have a positive attitude towards even like allergy treatments, they're more effective, right? So if the symptoms you're experiencing in life you see as welcoming, this is the mindfulness attitude of welcoming, guess what? The treatment works better. So go after a challenge. Light exercise is an easy one, stresses the body, but actually good for us. Cold, hot, both really good for us in small doses, right? It's challenging to our systems, but then give yourself a lot of time for rest and recovery. So work this balance and continually oscillate and notice your attitude towards challenge and stress and how it affects you emotionally. All right, let's come back to empathy and listening. What do you're all great listeners. So what do you do to listen well, if not listen mindfully? Type in the chat your best listening strategy, and then we'll get to questions and questioning strategy. How do you listen effectively? Yeah, remove distractions. Super. Remove yourself. Amazing, Sue. Yes. Ego out of the way. Be quiet, Linda. Awesome. Shut up. Thank you, Steve. Yes. If my lips are moving, I'm not listening. Full body and emotions. Yes. Self as instrument. Awesome. Set aside your own priorities. Go deeper. Wonderful. Now, you bring up, Robert, questions. So what are the best questions? How do we ask good? What's a good question versus a bad question? Level 3. Lyndon is way ahead. Charlie, thank you. Curious. Yeah. So can you ask what and how, not why, right? Why can make people defensive, open-ended. Yes. Thank you. So this is kind of the mindful listening list. You're basically anticipating. To listen mindfully means to listen with a quiet mind, to let your mud settle and to go deeper into somebody else's experience so that you can inquire maybe use a question, hopefully open-ended, and go from the words, thoughts to the feelings and intentions. You could call this level 3 and 4 listening, right? So I'm going to give you this as homework. If you're game, to share with a friend or spouse or colleague something that touched you and practice empathic listening. The idea is to look under the surface, right? Underneath the iceberg, look for something to care about, and then reflect back what you heard at an emotional level, right? At the feelings and intentions level. So share something that touched you. Give the other person a chance. Right? If you share just some sort of tactical work project, that's going to be harder to be empathic with. Share something that touched you, schedule a half hour, and both of you get a turn. Incredibly powerful. This is basically speaker listener, Howard Gardner's research with couples. Incredibly powerful for teammates, spouses, any relationship to practice mindful listening and empathic listening. And so again, we're going for below the words, thoughts, and feelings to the intentions underneath. Ideally, it's not just what you're feeling, but what are you wanting? To listen empathically in this way, we have to get out of this problem. We're always listening to solve, right? We're paid to be problem solvers for our clients, for each other. And so we want to add value, be the expert. And that really gets in the way of listening. So listen to how you listen. See if you can listen to learn instead of listening to solve. And listen to understand, exactly. So listen to yourself listening. Notice how you're listening and see if you can shift your attitude to be open and interested as opposed to just impatient and trying to get stuff out. We're so time pressed again that it's hard, but I would submit to you, this is an incredible homework to try, to build empathic listening. Now let's take it a step further beyond empathy towards compassion. So what is compassion? Compassion is empathy plus understanding with the intention to act. Okay, so we start with just, I understand what you're feeling. Okay, what are you feeling? Can I then understand why you're feeling it? And then can I make the intention to help? And you're thinking, well, my clients are kind of hard-edged. They're all those performance-oriented companies listed before. They're gonna be shy about this stuff. Well, it turns out there's two motivators to bring compassion into the workplace. One is it makes people feel good. Turns out some of the happiest times, you mentioned joy and positivity, some of the happiest times, if we measure people even physiologically, it's when they're in a feeling state of compassion. So compassion makes us feel good. But even better for all those profit-oriented companies, it's profitable. How is compassion profitable? Compassion makes for high-performing teams. Compassion builds trust. Right? So when teams feel like they can be safe with each other and not have all those negative, right, that 5-to-1, right? When people feel like the leader of the team and the team members are compassionate, they can relax and not feel that adrenaline jolt because you dissed me, or I wasn't inclusive, or didn't listen well. All those things make us jacked up and trust each other less. But when we start to relax because we have a compassionate leader, we can start to support each other. And so compassion is profitable. It makes us feel good and it makes us work better. So think about how you can start to bring compassion in the workplace, whether or not you use that word. I'll give you a simple example. So a leader I know would have town halls quarterly, and she would ask people, what's coming up on your calendar this quarter? And people would say, oh, I've got this project launch, or I've got this coming up, and she'd have her assistant write these down on her calendar. And that day or the following day, she'd call that person and say, how did that project go? How did that launch go? And people are like, wow, that's so awesome. You remembered and you took an interest. So simple. Right? You can make compassion into a planful project very simply by noticing and taking an interest in people. Genuine interest. Thank you, Sue. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be hard or really difficult emotional work just to notice people and appreciate them. Let's go beyond compassion. So you can practice compassion as homework. This is a habit. So much of what we're talking about emotionally is a habit. Our emotional lives are habits. So we can practice compassion and it can become more of a habit. We can also practice kindness and forgiveness Whoa, you're blowing my mind. SAP, IBM, are these companies really going to be interested in forgiveness? Start at home. Think of this situation. I go downstairs from my third floor office. The sink is full of dishes. Oh, come on, Lisa, why didn't you do the dishes? I can practice resentment all the time. There's always opportunities at home to practice resentment. You know what? Resentment doesn't feel good. It's a real lousy state of mind. And it's a habit. It's a choice. I can practice understanding, kindness, and forgiveness, or I can practice resentment. It's your choice. Really good research on gratitude, too. Amazing. That's a habit. And it will elevate your mood. This is Sean Acor's work at Harvard. Guaranteed. 3 weeks, higher mood. You ready? Think of 3 things at the end of the day you feel good about. I guarantee you greater optimism, patience, trust, and better mood in 3 weeks. Who wouldn't want that, right? Why is this? Because when we think of things we appreciate, we feel better. If you can't think of 3 things you're grateful for, think about a meaningful experience. I got a note actually from one of you all a few years back that said, hey, Josh, just really appreciate you're in my life. Whoa, that made my day. But you know what? I think you got more out of it from sending it to me. So if you can't think of something meaningful or grateful, send an appreciative note to a friend or a colleague. Same boost, right? Because giving is receiving. You give that appreciation, you get back immediately. And it's the positivity you're building from that exercise. So a lot of this stuff is built on the happiness research. There's a lot have been written, and self-help aisles are stuffed with books about this. And what is this happiness thing? We all want to be happy. Turns out it doesn't really work to chase happiness because we try to get it and it's fleeting, right? We think it's stuff related. We think it's going to be, I get paid more, I get more positive feedback, it's status. None of that stuff that I control. Turns out happiness isn't getting what we want. When we get what we want, we just kind of go back to what researchers call the hedonic treadmill. We just kind of get back on that treadmill at the same place we were. Turns out happiness is mostly appreciating what we have. So when we practice gratitude, we get into that appreciative mindset, we can be happier. So we can get off the hedonic treadmill by practicing gratitude, by practicing kindness. We could practice resentment and get really into a rut. It's your choice. So think about your choices and your habits. All of these are habits, right? So positivity, empathy are habits. They're skills and they're habits. Resentment, negativity, comparing what do you got versus what do I got, those are habits. Versus just being grateful for what I have, labeling my emotions versus getting stuck in them. These are habits. So how do we build these habits? I'm gonna go to another slide deck now and see if I can. I'm going to take my life in my hands here and see if I can do this. Switch windows and share with you what I call my top 100. And this is 100 ways to be mindful without mindful breathing, without meditating. So take a look at this and try not to be overwhelmed because 100 things is a lot to look at in one screen at one time. Block out everything, just focus on the emotion module for right now. You can look at the other things later. I'll send to Kathy and she's going to post it. All this stuff, you'll have lots of tools and resources after today. What I want you to do is think about one action from our conversation. Again, just think of the emotion module here. To stay focused on what you're feeling, to label it, to learn about it, to stay positive, to find reasons to laugh and have joy. Think of one action for yourself right now and write it down. Make the commitment. You all know the goal setting research, right? If you write it down, it's more likely to happen. If you share it with 52 other people on this call, it's even more likely to happen. Who's willing? Who's got something? Type in a chat right now if you're willing and ready to make a commitment to yourself of one action to cultivate positivity, gratitude, empathy over the days and weeks and months ahead. Yes, and the top 100 will absolutely be posted for everybody. Think of one thing right now. Listen to your body. So Charlie, you're going to the body module. That's great. Anybody on an emotion action? Anybody think of one thing you're going to do? Daily meditation. Nice. Important people. Awesome. You're going kind of into connecting module, but all good. And gratitude, Carolyn. Awesome. Wonderful. Wonderful. Now, once you've done this for yourself, then you'll flip the document to page 2. And this is team stuff, right? So mindfulness is ideally not an individual sport. If you go it alone, you will struggle. Bring your community with you, right? I mentioned the community despair, community healing. This is a wonderful community. Find people who can support you. It can be one person. But bring this to your teams at work. Don't try to be mindful in a team that's scattered and running all over the place. You don't even have to call it mindfulness. Ask your teammates, how can we support each other in positivity? How can we support each other in not chasing each other's tails? So think about one action for yourself and then one action for your team. And I'm going to go back to the other deck and close out the content part of what I wanted to share with you with a couple more thoughts. See if we can do this. Dum da dum. Will my slides cooperate? Yes. So Carolyn, just picking on you because I can see your face. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the habit slide again. I got a thumbs up from Kathy. Awesome. Thank you, Caroline. Okay. So what could an action plan look like? You want to write down these actions, make it smart, right? You all know the discipline of being smart, specific, measurable, actionable, you know all this. But don't just do the focus yourself piece, do the team piece. And if you write it down, it's more likely to happen, right? So mindfulness can be this wonderful, fuzzy thing. I'm trying to make it really focused and productive and an ongoing habit, because we could have a really nice conversation today. And then, you know, life is going to hit you in the face in 10 minutes and you're going to have 100 emails and you can go back into the treadmill. Discipline yourself, put together a plan, start with one action. Don't try to build this whole complete action plan immediately, right? Don't do it like this, whoops, like this guy did. He went to the doctor and he said, I want to make cutting edge relaxation. No, just be modest, right? Just be gentle with yourself, one action at a time, and build your plan. So I mentioned the top 100. This is my top 10. Don't be back to back. And I'm going to end this call in 3 minutes because I want you to have time to transition gracefully to your next thing. The 60-minute back-to-back meeting, the 30-minute back-to-back meeting. It's crazy, people. Give yourself breaks within the day. Mindful actions, the top 100, just little bits, all you need. But you need them continually through the day to get that 5-to-1 balance, right? Don't be overcommitted. Don't be time deprived. Stop multitasking, reduce it, and exercise, diet, and sleep are the pillars, right? Be mindful of what you consume, how it affects your mood and your attitude, not just food, but diet, of social media. And as we talked about, get outdoors. So if you want the top 100 boiled down, here's my top 10 for you. All right, that's everything. I'll send you the homework assignment again as a suggestion. Practice empathic listening, pick some ideas for yourself, practice compassion. That's it. So I'll stay on for another 5-7 minutes, but I'd like to invite questions now, comments, reactions. Come off mute, ask a question, or type it into chat. How are you feeling? Boundaries, yes, thank you, Carolyn. Boundaries are critical. And I talk more about that when I teach the mind module, but boundaries are so essential to our own sanity. How are you feeling, all of you? Give me one comment into chat. How are you feeling about this content? Is it so overwhelming? Do you think you can do it? How do you feel about your confidence that you can do this? Awesome. Yeah. So there's a question about how you can learn more. There's a bunch of articles and videos on my website. I will invite you all to connect with me on LinkedIn. This is how to do it. Again, the resources, I'll send a sample action plan to Kathy. I'll send her the top 100 and I'll send a reading list so you have some ideas about things to read. And wonderful, wonderful. So what I'm going to suggest is the final mindfulness activity. Again, I'll stay on for another 5 minutes, but I'm assuming all of you have another meeting in 10 minutes. So I'd like to suggest to you is to try the most difficult mindfulness practice, which is meeting transition. When we end this call and when you hang up, don't jump on your email. It's the most like we all got FOMO, right? What am I missing out? Because Josh asked me to set a boundary and not check. See if you can go another 5 minutes before checking your email. See if you can ground what we talked about, digest it, internalize it, make a commitment to yourself. Reach out to a friend to do that homework assignment, schedule that. Go get yourself something to drink. Go use the bathroom. Check your agenda, your most important priorities. And then check your email, because then you'll find out that next meeting was canceled and you have that hour to yourself. So try to transition gently. That's all the content I want. I'll answer questions. Tips about displaced emotions. Wow, that's a big one, Michael. We can go there. Any other questions? Happily entertain. Come off mute and ask or type in the chat. So displaced emotions. And please stay on and we'll talk if you'd like. Otherwise, transition gracefully to your next thing. And stay in touch, please.
And Josh, just to jump in on Leadership Forum side, I
Yeah,
just
please
dropped a survey out there in chat. I'll do it again if people missed it. Thanks. Feedback is a gift, as we all know in this field. And so we appreciate it. Josh will share it with you as well.
Thank you.
It only takes about 4 or 5 questions to go through. And Josh, just want to also say thank you to you. Lots of incredible information out there that we can all be applying. So thank you very much. And while people are transitioning, do want to remind people of upcoming weeks. So next week, there is another Incubating Leadership conversation that will happen next Wednesday at 12, as well as leading into the summit. And so next week, we will be hearing about leadership as a tool to positively impact elections. And that will be by Johannes, who does a lot of work in Ethiopia and is from there. And so we'll hear that. There'll be another one a week later on well-being for leaders. And then we'll get into the July 14th and 15th. Josh also mentioned some of his information that is out there on the Participate website. There's also a discussion thread that's out there as well. And we will drop that in chat here too, but I'll stop talking here. I'll drop that into chat, let people ask Josh questions, stay around, and to reinforce Josh's message about transitioning to your next meeting, do it with grace and give yourself a breath and step outside to get some rejuvenating energy if you have that choice.
Yes.
Thank you everyone for being here. It is great to see people, and thank you again, Josh.
Thank you, Joel. Yeah, and so I got the one question about displaced emotions. That's a tricky one. I think more of secondary emotions. So, and maybe you mean this with your question, but clarify if you don't. So sometimes what we feel is not the core. Sometimes what we feel is something that is perhaps protecting us. So often like anger can be experienced, or we get ourselves into an angry state because it's self-protective and it's more comfortable than, say, dealing with our sadness or our shame. So we lash out or we get, but if we let the mud settle and sit with it and pay attention to the anger, what we can feel underneath is often hurt or shame or some other feeling. So I think of secondary and primary emotions. But yeah, displaced is another term sometimes it's used. If your question is different, let me know. Or if somebody else has a different question, yeah, come off mute or type in the chat. We can talk.
Hey, Josh, can you hear me?
Yes, Michael. Was that your question or was it something else?
Yeah, it was similar to the lines of that. Basically, I was thinking when I was seeing your list there of emotions about sad, anger, etc. And so the thought that came into my mind, for example, say if you're my boss and you send out an email to one of my coworkers and my coworker didn't like the response you gave. Then my coworker comes to me and shares that information. My coworker's mad, and now I'm mad too at you. So that's what I was thinking in terms of how much of what we take on is a displaced emotion versus, the facts of that. This has nothing to do with me, but the way my coworker has presented, I feel like I should have some kind of reaction because I may be next, and how I respond behaviorally leads to a lot down the road.
Totally.
That's where I was going with that question.
Yeah, no, that's a great setup and great question. So yeah, I can take your stance if you're angry because it helps maybe us bond, and maybe I get self-protective because, like as you said, maybe I'm anticipating my boss coming with me with the same problem or the same thing, and I want to gear up for that. The other thing that you're touching on is what's called emotional contagion, right? So you're angry, and I get into it. We get angry together. So, and Boyatzis and others talk about this. We have mirror neurons that help us get into this thing. Whatever you're feeling, I can empathically respond, which there's some distance. When I'm empathic, you experience your feeling and I experience my feeling, and I can echo what you're feeling. But when I get sympathetic or over involved in your feeling, the contagion thing, you get sad, I get sad with you, So, and the other thing that this overlaps with is personalizing, right? So you talk about something and I think it's about me and I get defensive, or, it's like, so these emotions ricochet throughout our teams and our families. And it's so important that we take care of our own feelings. There's a teacher I love called Thich Nhat Hanh, and he has this idea of a breathing room, which is in every house, you have a room where when you have a feeling that's strong, you can go and sit and you breathe until the emotion settles. And then you can deal with somebody else. Don't deal with that feeling when it's like all over the place. Let your emotions be contained in this idea of mindfulness, is just to sit with them, not to react to them. And then we can use that information, decide, maybe I was, violated in some way. Maybe that anger is important, but how do I go meaningfully to act from that, as opposed to acting out the anger, which is a different thing. Yeah, great question.
That reminds me of, Joshua, a long time ago, someone presented the model of the mind being like the parent and the emotions as the kid, and you put your kid in timeout in a room. Well, the breathing room is like a little emotional timeout that the parent, the mind, said, go, you need a timeout.
Yeah.
And I've noticed over the years that metaphor has really helped a lot.
Yeah, that's great, Sue. Right. So can you put yourself in a timeout? And kids love it when they see their parent put themselves in a timeout. It's like, wow, that's amazing modeling. Boy, I guess, yeah. And so kids, my daughter will sometimes do that. It's been a little while, but she said, I need to go.
Josh, may I ask a question?
You may, and then we should probably wrap up. Last question.
Have you ever encountered situations where someone cares too much and therefore someone is too much of an empath and people accuse them of trying to control situations, trying to control emotions?
Yeah, totally. I have a number of clients in that situation right now.
How do you respond to that in a family sense? Not with clients, but with family.
So I think empathy is an amazing tool, Charlie, right? So because the temptation is to get frustrated, right? It's like, you're doing it again. You're over involved. It's not our problem. Right?
Exactly.
And so you want to control the other person who's doing this. That you see them being controlling this whole ricochet again. So the first step is to echo and to validate how much they care. And that's a wonderful thing that they care. That's a foundational thing. But then, okay, now how do we really care and act on it without being what we could call a do-gooder, right? How do we care in an effective way? But first you have to have, if the other person doesn't feel like you value that they're caring, they can't get your coaching. They can't get your help. You have to first start with validating that, hey, that's wonderful that we care. You care. Now what? Now what do we do? Let's just sit with that first. Because yes, caring can get into controlling very quickly. Totally.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being with each other and with me. And it was so awesome to be with you all. And I hope we can stay in touch.